Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to another edition of World Talks here on TVP World, where every word matters. I'm your host, Benjamin Lee, and please join me and my guests on this exclusive interview. Israel has launched a significant preemptive strike on Hezbollah targets in Lebanon, deploying 100 jet fighters in response to intelligence of an imminent attack. Now, this escalation follows a week of tension, with both sides preparing for a potential conflict. As Israel braces for further retaliation, the implications for the Middle East are profound. Joining us today on TVP World to discuss what this means for regional stability and global security is Marcin Styszyński from the Institute of Oriental Studies at Adam Mickiewicz University. Hello, sir, and welcome to TVP World.
Good morning, sir. Thank you for the invitation.
So first, can you help us understand what are some of the key factors that led to Israel carrying out this preemptive strike on Lebanon?
First, we should point out that we are living in misinformation and misleading data, especially that we have both sides of the conflict. I mean, Hezbollah or Iran-backed groups and Israel. So both sides declare and claim different statements regarding the outcomes or results of the yesterday's attacks and strikes. For instance, we have Hezbollah's leader Hassan Nasrallah, who yesterday claimed that attacks succeeded and we have good results regarding the attacks towards Israeli infrastructure and etc. Besides, we have Israeli sides which declares that most of missiles were intercepted at the beginning of the attack. So in this context, it's important to see what is the real objective of the attack. I think the TVP World Station is a good platform to make it clear or more clear than both sides. However, there are some important outcomes or important conclusions of yesterday's attack. First, we can say that Hezbollah, I mean, main hostile group of Israel, identified or choose or identified precise targets regarding military and intelligence bases. All this is in order to weaken operational capacities of Israeli forces. And as I say, that the situation shows that Hezbollah identifies these targets very precisely. Besides, the group avoids targeting civilian infrastructure, according to the Hassan Nasrallah claims from yesterday. So that's also an important outcome. And it should be noted that Hezbollah retaliated yesterday because, according to their claims, they are saying that that's because of a lack of results and outcomes regarding the ongoing negotiations, peace negotiations in Cairo and in Qatar. We should remember that there are ongoing talks in Cairo and in Doha regarding the ceasefire in the region. So that means that it's quite a pessimistic scenario because Nasrallah said that they were waiting until the results because there is no results. So that's why they decided to retaliate. And besides, that's the first step, according to the Iran-backed groups, that's the first step of the retaliation. So we should expect a second phase as well.
Right, you mentioned something pretty interesting earlier that, both sides are sending very conflicting messages. And unfortunately, there's a lot of misinformation, disinformation flying around the internet space because both sides have their own narrative to push. So I'm wondering if we can reverse engineer these message and reach the motives of both sides. So in other terms, can you help us understand why is in Israelis' favor to claim that the missiles were being shot down, and why is it in Hezbollah's favor to say that it's been successful? In other words, what's the message behind the message?
That's an important question and interesting question as well. That it's hard to precise behind or background claims. Of course, first we have this propaganda objective towards both sides of the conflict. Of course, Hezbollah tries to show or demonstrate in front of the public opinion, local public opinion, that they are strong, they're retaliated. Besides, Israeli forces tries to also demonstrate that they are still strong to retaliate or to deterrence Hezbollah. Besides, we should remember that both sides tries to. That's deterrence objective is very important here because we should remember that a lot of commanders, the retaliation is not only because of the Israeli or Hamas-Israel conflict, but we should remember that Israeli forces recently targeted important commanders of Hezbollah. Just to remember, Fuad Shukr is an important command of Hezbollah. He had been killed a couple of weeks ago. So that's the main objective of the retaliation. So in this context, Hezbollah tries to deterrence. That's the main objective, to avoid potential further losses within its own organization. And of course, Israel also tries to demonstrate its capacities to retaliate and also to deterrence hostile forces like Iran-backed Hezbollah or Houthi and etc. and etc.
Right, so this is a very similar situation as we've seen when Iran fired a few hundred rockets into Israel and being shot down, where they kind of touted it as a victory within their own country for domestic consumption reasons. Do you think this is a very similar situation that we're looking at?
You've just mentioned important point, because of course in April we had this Iran retaliation, straight retaliation against Israel with hundreds or even thousands of missiles. However, it should be noted that we have ongoing mechanisms of the proxy war. It means that still we have Iran-backed group which retaliate instead of the direct fights or direct combat between hostile sides, I mean Israel and Iran. April's strikes is exceptional in this context. However, now still we should remember that Iran still didn't retaliate. Instead of direct fight, it's Hezbollah, it's Houthi in Yemen, for instance, or we have some groups in Iraq and in Syria and etc. So still the mechanism of the proxy war exists instead of the direct fights and direct combat, which on the other hand will be very disastrous for the region, because the straight or direct fight between the hostile side will bring very, very pessimistic outcomes to the region. So I think that's an important factor as well.
And where do you see it going forward? Do you think that eventually that's going to be an inevitability, or do you see more of these kind of proxy type of attacks?
That's also an important question, because still we have two wings or two factions. In fact, we have this peace negotiations within Egypt, Qatar, and including Hezbollah in Israel. Although Hezbollah refused to follow peace negotiations, however, the talks are still ongoing, and we have the second camp. It's this hostile camp which tries to retaliate and which responds military. We have this military responses. So that's the question. If we see that peace negotiations are not so successful, because if we have this attack from Hezbollah, so it means that we have an impasse in negotiations. We should also remember that Hezbollah refused. The main problem is this withdrawal of Israeli forces from the Gaza Strip, especially from the border between the Gaza Strip and Egypt. As well, there is also some places like corridors with Israeli forces. So that's the main problem for the ongoing peace talks. So it's according to Hamas claims, we shouldn't expect some positive outcomes. However, it's still on the table. So it could be an equivalent or an alternative for this proxy war or this military responses.
All right. Ever since October 7 and attack and now the incursion into the Gaza Strip, internationally, when it comes to the perception, the needle has been shifting one way and another. Do you think this incident is going to shift international perception another way, or is it going to go down the same direction?
So important. I think we have the same direction. If we are talking about the public opinion, so we have this growing protest against, especially civilian situation in the Gaza Strip, because that's a tragic situation. We have growing numbers of casualties and damages and etc. So from this public opinion perspective, we have this negative views and negative opinions. Politically, it's completely different, because, of course, it seems that Western sides is quite far away from the situation or from the conditions or objectives in the Middle East itself. So, and besides, also Israel is quite abundant now regionally, because most of neighboring countries are directly or indirectly involved in the conflict. However, even in the regarding the airspace, it's also an important factor. So it means that politically, it's hard for the Western sides to negotiate. Besides, we have also involvement of other sides and other powers like China and Russia. So it's also an important factor.
Definitely a lot of moving pieces going into this. So thank you so much for helping us dissect this very complicated situation. Thanks again for being with us on TVP World. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Bye-bye.
Cheers.
Bye-bye.
And thank you for watching this edition of World Talks. But for more news, update, and commentary, please stay tuned to TVP World.